Hey everybody, what's up? Tim here with today's magnetic moment. I hope you are awesome and crushing it. Thank you so much for watching. Title for today's shoot is Your Identity is Your Power. And I want to talk to you today about the absolute importance of knowing what your identity is, making sure it's congruent with who you want to be, and understanding that your identity is your power. And we're going to look at a quote that comes out of the movie. I think it's Iron Man 3, where the character Tony Stark at the end of the movie says, you know what? You can take away my money, my possessions, even my Iron Man suit, but it doesn't change the fact that I am Iron Man. And if you've watched the Iron Man movies, you know that the character Tony Stark goes through a pretty cool evolution. He starts out in the beginning of movie 1 as this billionaire playboy who was totally absorbed in himself. But through a whole series of events and near-death experiences, he takes a look at himself in the mirror and he decides that there's more to my life than just me. And he turns himself inside out and decides to make his life about other people. And he creates this super suit that allows him to become Iron Man, and he goes on to become this superhero. But he also goes through a psychological evolution where at the end of the movies he says, you know what, I don't need this Iron Man suit to make me this superhero, because I've become that person on the inside. It's become my identity. It's the way I see myself. And because I see myself that way, I act and think, and everything that I do is a result of that image that I have of me on the inside. And you and I all have an identity. Our identity is simply the story that we tell ourselves about us over and over again. So whatever you tell yourself about you is in essence your identity. Because once you start to tell yourself something enough of times, you believe it to be true. It becomes your truth. And then it affects everything you say, everything you do, every single interaction. And in essence, forms your identity. And for many of us, we just let that internal image flow on its own and be created on its own. And we're not real intentional about creating the identity that we want to have and the way that we want to be seen by the outside world. But more importantly, how do we want to be seen by us? How do we want to see ourselves? Because the way that we see ourselves dictates everything about us. Now, if you look at the character Iron Man, one of the significant things that happened to him is he had a significant shift in purpose. Before he became this superhero, his purpose was all about him. But once he became this superhero, it was a result of seeing all the destruction that he had created in the world and deciding that he could become a better person and that he could change that as a result of working to eradicate all the evil and injustice and become this superhero Iron Man. And when he shifted his purpose from himself to how I can help and influence others, he became a new person. And as a result of that, he started to tell himself a new story, an internal dialogue, and he absorbed a new identity. And he became that identity. He became Iron Man, and that identity started to create a vision of what he could do and what he could become and the way he could impact the world. And that's the same thing for us. What is your purpose? What are you about? Because your purpose is going to totally define your internal dialogue. It's going to tell you the things that you believe are important and the things that you believe are true about you, and that forms your identity. And once your identity takes hold, it paints a vision of your future. It says, this is who I am, which is your identity. This is what I'm about, which is your purpose. And as a result of that, this is where I'm going to go. And that's your vision. And if your identity is small and your purpose is self-edifying, your vision is going to be small because it's going to be all about you. But if you have a great purpose, if your purpose is about adding value and impact, your identity is going to be absorbed in that purpose. And your identity is going to be somebody who goes out and adds value and has an impact and is successful and perseveres and goes through failures and makes a difference. Those are the stories you're going to tell yourself. And once you start to tell yourself those stories, you create a dynamic, alive, synergistic vision for yourself. You say, now that I know that I'm about adding value and adding impact and I'm making a difference and I can persevere through failures and I can succeed at anything I put my mind to, and I'm not a person who quits. When that's the story that's going on inside your head, that becomes your identity, who you are, and that paints a vision that's absolutely magnificent. It is the secret. The 3 legs that are the most important, I believe, in a person's life are their purpose. Once they get their purpose down, it shapes their identity, and that goes on to paint the vision of their lives. But it all starts with the stories that we tell ourselves. So what are you telling yourself? What stories are you telling yourself? What do you believe is true about you? Is it what you want to be true? Because if it's not, you can change it right now. Start to tell yourself a different story. Start to think differently. Start to challenge your thoughts. And if you want to go deep enough, jump into your purpose and say, is this what I want to be about? Or is there more to my life than the purpose that I've been living? And once your purpose gets nailed down and you start to tell yourself a story that aligns with that, that's empowering, you're going to see a picture for your life. That's your vision. That's absolutely remarkable. Tony Stark's life changed when he started to tell himself a different story. A story that was congruent with his new purpose, with one that made a difference, with one that made an impact. And as a result of that, he started to see himself in a different light. And in the beginning, yeah, he needed an Iron Man suit to become Iron Man. But by the end of the film, he realized this is who I am. It's not something I put on. And the same thing is true with us. Once you start to tell yourself a different story, it becomes who you are. It's not something you have to put on or something you have to fake. And that opens the doors to just visions that are mind-boggling and amazing. And that will absolutely ignite you with fire and passion and excitement. So who are you? Apart from all the stuff, apart from everything you've got, all your successes, who are you? What story have you been telling yourself? And if you don't like your identity, start to tell yourself a different story. Tell yourself stories that are empowering, that point you in the direction you want to go, not in the direction you don't want to go. Stories that are bigger than you, stories that are so big about you that they almost terrify you to believe them. But that's the kind of thing that shapes mighty identities. And when you get a mighty identity, you're going to have a mighty vision. And when you know who you are, you also know who you're not. So take a look at your identity. What are you telling yourself? And to change that, all you have to do is start to tell yourself the story that you want to hear, as opposed to the story you don't want to hear. I challenge you, take a look inside and enhance and enforce the stories that empower you, and throw out the ones that don't, and shape them into ones that you want to hear. Because that will allow you to reignite your purpose and create a vision for your life that you will just love living every single day. So this is Tim with today's Magnetic Moment. Your power is in your identity. It can be whatever you want it to be. And we can take away all your stuff, all your money, but at the end of the day, it's you and your identity. And like Tony Stark, who's Iron Man, you too can become Iron Man or Iron Woman. Choice is yours. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.